Hello and welcome to the Visionary Chronicles. Appreciate you being with me again today. We are continuing our series, Becoming a Visionary Brand, with content taken from my first best-selling book, The Visionary Brand, the success formula behind the world's most visionary brands. And this will be Chronicle 4 today. So I'll do a quick review of the first three. If you haven't listened to the first three, highly encourage you to listen to the first three because it kind of follows in sequence. But today is Chronicle number 4, Navigating Brand Challenges and Crises. This is the one that I probably get the most questions on when I'm out working with Liquid Mind and the brands and the leaders that I work with and brands that I've been with over my career with Adidas, TaylorMade, Oakley, K-Swiss, whoever it happens to be. Everybody faces crisis and brand challenges, and many people feel that brands of that size or of that stature, of that success, even Nike that I've worked with, has challenges that they have to deal with every season. So nobody's invincible to this. So if you think you are, let me give you some encouragement today that we'll talk about this, brand challenges and crises. And I'll give you some examples of big companies you would think were somewhat bulletproof, but they're not. So this is Chronicle number 4, again, Navigating Brand Challenges and Crises, and it's from our Becoming a Visionary Brand series from my book, my first book, The Visionary Brand, the success formula behind the world's most visionary brands. So first I'll say is that crises doesn't build character. What it really does is it reveals it. And crises doesn't create your brand architecture. It reveals whether you built it on solid ground or sand. And we talk about this foundation many times with brands, is that you have to start with a clear, cohesive, authentic strategy plan built around a vision that has a solid foundation, or else it just crumbles. That's what we talk about with building it on ground or if you build it on sand. Which one do you want to build it on? So every brand, as I'd mentioned, every brand will face challenges. They'll face crises. The question isn't if, it's truly when. And when that moment comes, you either strengthen your brand or you destroy your brand, your choice. So you need to be prepared for what's coming. So again, welcome to the Visionary Chronicles. This is Chronicle number 4, Navigating Brand Challenges and Crises in my series, Becoming a Visionary Brand. And let me give you a recap on the first 3 real quick. In Chronicle 1, we talked about understanding visionary branding, the visionary gap, the liquid mindset. We talked about what separates iconic brands and experiences from everyone else. In Chronicle 2, we dove a little bit deeper into the architecture of disruption and what that looks like. How to build brands willing to cannibalize their own success and stay ahead by disrupting yourself first. In Chronicle 3, we covered creating, just last week, creating a consistent brand experience, mapping touch points, eliminating experience gaps, and building systems that deliver consistency at scale. And what I do with each one of these chronicles, just so you know, is that I'll challenge you. I'll give you exercises, I'll give you questions to ask yourself, I'll give you roadmaps. So hopefully it helps you along the way into building your visionary brand. And by the way, just to give you a little bit of comfort, when I wrote the book, there's a reason that I talked about the visionary brand, because I did not find, even with Apple, a visionary brand, because they also have weak points that they're consistently working on. So let's dig into this chronicle today. And so here's the reality. You can do everything right and still face moments that really threaten everything you've built. A product failure, a public misstep, a market shift, a competitive attack, a global disruption. Think about all these different things, because I want you to think about these, because most people think in the context of a product failure. They think in context of something they misspoke in the press, but this can be geopolitical as well. And it can be a global disruption that you're not prepared for. So you need to be prepared for each one of these, and you need to make sure that you understand what to do in these situations. So these moments, as I call them, really what they do is they separate visionary brands from everyone else. Not because visionary brands avoid challenges, they really don't. And again, I go back to the big brands when I talk to smaller companies and the entrepreneurs that we work with on Liquid Mind. Is one of the first words out of their mouth, and I'm sure it's you when you're listening to this as well, is that, yeah, but they have a lot of money and they're invincible, they've been around forever. They face challenges even as you face challenges, and they all are the same. And so when you look at these moments that separate visionary brands from everybody else, not because visionary brands avoid challenges, again, they don't, but because they navigate them differently. I'm going to talk to you today exactly how to respond when crises does hit, because it will hit. And your response to these will really define who you are as a company, brand, product, or service. So the first is key concept number one, that crisis, what I call the crises response framework. From chaos to clarity, because that's where we start, right? We start with chaos more often than not. If it isn't chaos, it's really not a challenge for you. It's just a normal state of the business. So when crisis does hit, what happens is most organizations either freeze or they panic. And I can tell you from experience again, neither one of those work very well. Challenges are a normal part of business. They're normal obstacles of business. A competitor launches a new product, as an example. Sales are down this quarter. A key employee leaves. Think about these. These are things that you just think are a normal part of business, but to a certain degree, they can become challenges for your business. These require good management, really not transformation. So what I'm getting at is all crises are a little bit different. They threaten brand survival or fundamental brand equity, either one. They're unpredictable. They exceed normal operational capacity. That's why they're crises. And they really demand leadership transformation. So first, what I want you to do is, and we whiteboard this with Liquid Mind as well, and what we talk about is crisis management is severity test. Because many people can't pan out what to do during crisis, and I've seen it many times, is one of the first things they look at is, well, we need to cut costs. Well, that's really not a solution. That's just a remedy to something that's temporary, and you're really just putting a Band-Aid on something that's bleeding a lot worse than you think. So it's really critical that you take the time to do this severity test to determine what you're facing. So let me give you a few questions, and hopefully you can write these down. I say on this series, what I have is I have these in my notes, and I have this in video as well as audio version. So in the video, we'll actually put that in the video, and then for the audio, we'll actually have it in the audio notes as well. So this is the severity test, and there'll be 4 questions for you. Number 1 question you need to ask yourself is, does this threaten brand survival or fundamental equity? Number 2, is this beyond our normal operational capacity to survive? Number 3 is, how much time do we have, hours per day versus weeks? So, and the last would be, what's the amplification potential? And this is usually a PR issue. Could this go viral? If you answer crises to 2 or more questions, you need to activate crises protocols immediately. And what is this, what I call this 5-step crisis response framework? And what you're looking at is really step 1, which is assessing. And if you do find from one of those questions something you've identified as a crisis, within the first 24 hours, you need to assess the situation. And here are some questions you need to ask in assessing your situation. Number 1 is, get facts fast, not rumors, get facts. The next question is, what happened exactly? Number 2, what's the scope and the scale? Number 3 is, who's affected by this? And number 4 is, what are we legally and ethically obligated to do? That's critical, not just legal, but ethically. Because what do you stand for as a brand? You lose trust from your customers because you're not being ethical. That's as damaging, if not more damaging, than a legal issue. And the last is, what's the worst case scenario that we would face? So really what this does is it sets the boundaries. You really want to know the boundaries of what the crisis is. This isn't pessimistic, it's preparation. And step 2 is the first 48 hours. Protect. Priority order matters. Okay, so I'm going to give you 3 priorities that matter most, and you're protecting these first. So again, within the first 48 hours, step 2 is first, protect people. Customer safety, employee well-being, community impact. If people are at risk, everything else is secondary. You may not have it in your crises, but if you do, this is one thing that takes priority. Second is protect brand equity at all costs. What immediate actions prevent further brand damage? Pull problematic products. If there's an issue with the product, you just need to pull them. Number 2 is pause problematic campaigns. This is a PR issue. Number 3 is halt problematic practices, and this is going to be internal. So when I identify these, a crisis can be internal, it can be external. So you need to identify this as a priority to protect brand equity through pulling problematic products. Number 2 is pause problematic campaigns, external. And number 3 is halt problematic practices, internal. And the third is protect operations. Yes, protect operations. And what you need to do is keep critical operations running while managing this crisis. If you can't ship product, you can't get revenue. So never reverse this order. People, brand, operations. That's the order in crisis management. Step number 3 is communicate and make sure it's ongoing. I see too many brands when they come to us with a crisis. I go, well, did you just communicate with us, with your team? Did you communicate with a company? Well, we gave a company announcement through an email. And we never said anything again. We didn't do any follow-up. We didn't talk about it. We just said we'll get back to them when we have more information. Well, that's not good enough. So the steps on this communication is internal first. Your team needs to hear from you before media or social. What happened, what we're doing, what they should say or do, and what comes next, because you don't want them to be caught off guard. You need to be immediate on your communication, and you need to have it outgoing first. And then you'll have external is always second. Communicate quickly and honestly with those that need to know. Acknowledge the situation, share what you know, explain what you're doing, and commit to being honest and giving immediate updates if you do have any information to convey to the public. Both internally first and externally second. That's critical. And what I'll say here is that transparency in these situations beats perfection. So don't always be trying to perfect the communication. Be honest and authentic, and that's good enough. It's better to communicate incomplete information honestly than wait for a perfect information that comes way too late. So always remember that. Step 4 is solve, which it could be days, it could be weeks. You don't know. You want to address the root cause, not the symptoms of the problem. Half measures create new crises. You want to correct the crises and what caused the crises in the first place. Fix it completely. Don't half-ass it. Then validate the solution actually works before declaring victory. And step 5 is post-crises learn. What did crises reveal about our vulnerabilities? What needs to change permanently? How do we prevent recurrence? How do we build this learning into our systems? When we face potential product issue at TaylorMade, we follow this exact framework. Assess within 24 hours. Voluntarily stop sale immediately. Communicate customers and partners within 48 hours. Implement engineering fix, not a Band-Aid. New testing protocols permanently. The crisis could have destroyed the brand. Instead, our disciplined response strengthened it, and our market share actually grew over time. Customers saw us prioritize their safety over revenue. So, what are some quick principles off of this step process on crisis management? Is use the 4-question severity test to distinguish challenges from crises. Assess with facts, not assumptions or rumors. Number 3, protect and order. People, brand, operations. Never reverse these. Number 4, communicate transparency over perfection. Number 5, solve the root cause of the issue, not just the symptoms. Learn and build prevention into all your systems. Document your framework now before a crisis hits. And then concept number 2 is decision-making under pressure. And I understand a lot of this stuff I'm talking about isn't glamorous work. It isn't things most people think about. But here's the reason I'm talking about it. Again, just to reiterate, that this can cause brand equity damage and long-term sustainability of a brand worse than actually declining revenues, because it's the root cause of declining revenue. It's the root cause of lifetime customer value being degraded through authentication damage. So when we talk about concept 2, decision-making under pressure, speed without panic. Crises demands speed. But speed without direction is just merely panic. Here's how to make fast decisions without making things worse. The vision versus the tactics matrix. So it's a little matrix that I put together for you to make on this decision tree of how to go about this crisis management. This is your decision framework under pressure. You really need to have absolute clarity on what stays fixed and what adapts. And when you talk about things that need to be fixed, that never change, your core values. I should say they stay fixed. They are fixed. They never change, is your core values. Number 1. Number 2 is what you stand for as a brand, company, or service. Who you serve, understand who your customer is and how they purchase from you and what their expectations are and what the community expectation is. What are your ethical boundaries as a brand, company, or service, and your quality standards, the baseline that everything you do is built off of? These are your foundational principles of your brand that are fixed and they never change. These are non-negotiable things. A crisis does not change them. Be aware of that. Pressure does not erode them. And here they are again, these top 5 that never change, and they're fixed under pressure. Your core values, what you stand for, who you serve, your ethical boundaries, and your quality standards. Number 2 is what's fluid? What can we adapt? And there's a difference between changing and adapting things. So the fluid things are these. How do we deliver value to our customers? Which products do we prioritize? What markets do we focus on? What channels do we use in order to communicate with our customers or sell products? How you allocate resources? And what partnerships that we pursue along the way? These must adapt to the new reality under these crises. Clinging to pre-crisis tactics is really fatal and a stupid decision. Don't be so hard-headed that you don't make these changes when you identify a crisis that's clinging to these pre-crisis tactics that you used to have. You need to be fluid and you need to adapt. I always say that you have a destination with your vision. That destination point never changes. How you get there does. You can have what I call switchback leadership, and that's what we're talking about here, is adapting, being fluid. And here's an example of Airbnb on the COVID crisis. What was fixed with them, and let me be clear, is these things that don't change, was their mission, which was belong anywhere, a commitment to hosts and guest quality standards. What was fluid for Airbnb during this crisis was they shifted from short-term travel to long-term stays, pivoted to work from anywhere, changed cancellation policies, introduced enhanced cleaning protocols, and developed virtual experiences. They held mission constant while adapting everything else along the way. That's the liquid mindset in crises. The ability for you to be fluid and adapting. It's liquid mindset. And I talked about that in the previous Chronicles on becoming a visionary brand, a liquid mindset. So, what is the decision? This is an interesting one when we talk about crises, is that the decision speed framework. Immediate decisions, things that can't wait. These effectively are hour by hour. And there's 4. The first is safety issues. Number 2 is legal obligations. Number 3 is preventing escalation. And number 4 is the initial communication before somebody outside talks to your team or your company about it. So in rapid framework, facts we know is our obligation. We want to prevent further harm, and we decide and act immediately. And short-term decisions can be days. You need speed, but it allows for some analysis along the way. And when we looked at the short-term decisions during crises, we're talking about tactical responses, number 1. Number 2 is resource allocation. And many times this gets misconstrued. Resource allocation means not resource elimination. And I want to be really clear on this one, because many times I've seen where you get too many chiefs and not enough Indians, and they get the ones that take the brunt of the crises. So resource allocation versus reallocation versus being let go. The third is communication strategy. Number 4 is your operational adjustments along the way. So a quick process here is gather key input, small group, make sure it isn't too expanded, map options out and choose direction, and then execute on them. That's a short-term decisions. Medium-term decisions are weeks. We shape the recovery. It may not be immediate, but we make strategic pivots along the way. We make major resource commitments or reallocation of resources relative to the previous point. And then, if need be, we have long-term positioning that needs to either change, stay intact, or updated or adapted. And then we have organizational changes. So really take the time here in these to be thoughtful. Don't rush these. That's why I say these are weeks, not hours. And one way, what I call one-way versus two-way doors. I always get the interesting discussion when I put this one up on the board. And one-way doors are hard to reverse. And think about that during crises. And I say this because as we go through mapping through a crisis, I put 2 doors up there. I go, once you make this decision, it's a one-way door. And the intent here is that it's hard to reverse. It deserves more time. This is like firing people, shuttering divisions, major brand repositioning. These are all things that during crisis you have to be very careful how you execute this plan. If you got a one-way door decision, make sure you take more time. Two-way doors are easy to reverse. You can make them fast. You can adjust later. It's very fluid. It's a very liquid mindset. This is pausing campaigns, shifting spend allocation, testing, messaging, whatever it may be. This is really kind of a P&L decision and things that you can adjust along the way. But most importantly, what we talk about here in our sessions that we have one-to-one with leaders that are going through crisis, and we've worked this through with very large brands and also entrepreneurial brands. I said earlier that everybody faces crises along the way. And what you look at is, avoiding panic. Everybody goes through a crisis and they say, well, how do we avoid panic? And this is kind of a preparation meetings that we have and decision tree that we have. And what panic looks like is, and this is what I always say when I come either in the beginning of a crisis, in the middle of a crisis, or the end of a crisis. I can kind of tell what this looks like. And panic looks like contradictory decisions, reversals within hours of making a decision, no clear criteria as to why you made the decision, random reactions, and team confusion. All of these are not good for the long-term benefit of the brand, company, product, service, or most importantly, the team itself. A disciplined speed looks like clear framework, consistent criteria for making decisions, fast execution once decided, and calm communication and team clarity along the way. During the 2008 financial crisis, I watched companies panic. Random cost cuts, contradictory communications, no strategy. And companies with disciplined speed, clearer frameworks, fast execution, and consistent direction. So it's kind of a contradiction of either you want to panic, you want to stay disciplined, it's your choice. And so when you look at both, really make sure that you understand, because these are the things when we talk about crises that I find in almost every instance is the leaders making these decisions don't realizing that they're panicking. They just don't know what else to do. So they don't have a plan before the crisis hits. So I know this isn't sexy, this isn't something people like to talk about, but if you have the things I'm talking about here before a crisis hits, you've got a roadmap to not only working through it, but also making correct decisions and executing on those decisions, moving your brand forward and achieving success when others are panicking. So panic took years to recover from in 2008. Disciplined speed led to faster, stronger recovery as a result. So some quick principles off of this is document vision versus tactics frameworks before the crisis hits. That's number one. Number two is never compromise what's fixed. Meaning fixed is things you don't change, things you can't change, you can't compromise on. And you also rapidly adapt to what's fluid. In immediate decisions within hours are safety, legal, and communication aspects of the brand or company. Short-term decisions, which are days, can be tactics and operations. Medium-term decisions are usually weeks, and they're normally strategy and structure orientated. And remember, one-way doors need time. Once you make them, there's no going back. Two-way doors need speed. Things that you can always go back and change if needed. One-way doors don't change. Discipline prevents panic. So you need a framework around ensuring that you can build this with speed, but also discipline. And concept 3 is really the crisis communication. What to say and when. And this is super important as well, because you want to make sure that you're communicating both internally and externally consistently and accurately and authentically. So what does this, let's just say, this crisis communication framework look like? Principle 1 is that speed always beats perfection. We talked about it earlier. Don't wait for all the answers. Communicate what you know and communicate it right away. And your first communication should be within 24 hours. And the questions would be, here's what we know, here's what we don't know yet, and here's what we're doing, and here's when you'll hear from us next. It gives a clear set of communication timelines and expectations. That's enough. Waiting for perfect information while speculation fills the void is worse than partial information honestly communicated. Principle number 2 is acknowledge before explaining. I find this is one of the interesting ones that I find with leaders, that they should have said something in 2 minutes when it took them 20 minutes or maybe 2 hours. Start by acknowledging the situation and impact before explaining or trying to justify anything. And here's some examples of what's both bad And what's good? Some examples of communications. Bad is due to supply chain complexities and unprecedented market conditions. That's bad. You're not really communicating anything. It's just a bunch of jarbled words that people don't care about. Good is we failed to deliver on time. That's unacceptable. Here's why it happened and what we're doing. People need to know you see the problem before they'll listen to explanations. Don't give them a bunch of jarbled message that not even you know what you're saying, but you're saying it just out of obligation and people catch on to that. Principle number 3 is take responsibility before making excuses. Even if circumstances are outside your control, take responsibility for its impact. So let me give you a couple examples here. Bad is the vendor we rely on failed to deliver, so unfortunately, blah, 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 blah. Good is our customers experience unacceptable delays. We take full responsibility while our vendor contributed. We should have built redundancy. Here's how we're fixing it. Now, those are 2 communications. We work with 2 separate companies due to their crisis. And both were well received. And we worked through the crises together, locking arms through this crisis management system I'm going through today. So responsibility really builds trust. Excuses erode it. Principle number 4 is action over apology. Apologies matter, but actions matter more. Action demonstrates commitment. Apology is just words. Principle number 5 is internal before external. Super important for your team, your company, and your brand. Your team needs to hear from you before media or social media. So it's really important within that first 24 hours I had mentioned that internal communication is key. Be authentic, be timely, be consistent, and be comprehensive. Give them the facts about what's happening, what you're doing about it, what they should say to customers about it, and what comes next. If employees find out from Twitter you've lost internal trust at the worst possible time you could imagine. So the transparency spectrum that we're dealing with is you can't always share information, but you can always be honest about what you can't share. That's a key principle as well. We can't share details yet, blah, 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 but we can commit to sharing what we can as soon as we can. That was a communication we put in with our 3rd company we worked with. That's transparent without holding back information from customers or from your team. So communication channels during crisis: internal, direct from leadership via emails, hands-on team meetings, customers, email, websites, statements, social media. All of these are important during crises management. Partners, direct communication from account teams, the media, prepared statements, spokesperson availability, and the public, social media, website, press release, if it warrants giving this information to the public. So different stakeholders in your brand, company, or service need different information at different times. So really plan this, what I call cascade of information, but make it specific to each communication channel during the crises. It's critical that you do this. And when we face these issues tailor-made, we communicated with our retail partners within 24 hours. We didn't have all the answers yet, but we told them what we knew, what we were doing, when we'd update. Transparency, maintain trust through a crisis. Super important. And some of the quick principles here are that I'll give you 6 of them. 7 of them, actually. Number 1 is communicate within 24 hours with available information of what you're going to be doing for the brand and for the company. Number 2 is acknowledge before explaining. Take responsibilities before excuses. Lead with action, not just an apology. Super important that you're authentic in your communication, knowing that there's an issue and you're being honest with them on where you're at and also what the next steps are. Internal communication before external, always. Be transparent about what you can't share. Speed beats perfection in crisis communication, and different stakeholders need different messages. And then key concept number 4 is building resilience before the crisis hits. The best crisis response is the preparation you do before the crisis even arrives. So here's how to build organizational resilience. The 6 elements of brand resilience. One is financial buffers, cash reserve, credit lines, financial flexibility. Target 6 to 12 months of operating expenses and reserves. I know it's hard, but it separates brands that navigate crisis from brands that don't survive it. Number 2 is operational redundancy. Single points of failure kill brands in crises. Single supplier, build up backup relationships. Single channel, develop alternatives. Single product line, diversify. All these are important. Key person dependencies, which a lot of companies have, cross-train and document. Redundancy costs money in good times. It saves you in bad times. Number 3 is cultural readiness. Is your culture rigid or adaptive? Defensive or learning orientated? Blame focused or solution focused? Culture under crisis reveals itself very quickly. Build the culture that thrives under pressure before pressure arrives. This means rewarding people, celebrating, practicing scenarios, and building comfort with uncertainty. Number 4 is crises protocols. Document crises response protocols before the crisis even hits. What does this mean? Who's on the crisis team? What's the communication chain? What are the decision authorities along the way? So everybody's clear on what happens when you've identified a crisis. You can't build these during the crisis. You need to build them before the crises. Number 6 is stakeholder relationships. You always want to make sure you have strong relationships with key stakeholders before the crisis gives you credibility before the crisis happens. Key stakeholders, give them credibility before the crisis even strikes. Customers, employees, partners, investors, media, regulators. If you've built trust pre-crises, they'll give you the benefit of the doubt during crises. I find that being the case. Nobody really wants to hammer anybody when they're down. It only communicate during crisis. You have no credibility foundation at all. Number 6 is scenario planning. Regularly ask, what could threaten us? How would we respond to this? Don't just identify risk, practice responding. Run some of these scenarios, and I'm sure some of these would apply to you along the way. Product recall, competitive disruption, regulatory change, economic downturns. All of these are important to be rehearsed prior to them happening. So your resilience audit is this. And here's the question. Rate yourself on 1 to 10 here. And I'll give you a few that you rate yourself with. Financial buffers, number 1. Operational redundancy, number 2. Cultural readiness, number 3. Crises protocol, number 4. Stakeholder relationships, number 5. And scenario planning, number 6. Below 7 on any element, that's a vulnerability. Strengthen it before the crisis finds it. Super important. So build your crisis team now. Identify these roles before the crisis. Crisis leader, communication lead, operations lead, legal counsel, finance lead, HR lead. Meet quarterly, review protocols, run scenarios. Build relationships and trust now so you can operate smoothly under pressure when the crisis hits. At Oakley, we did quarterly scenario planning, identified potential crises, and walked through reverse response protocols. It felt like overhead. But when actual crises hit, we responded faster and better because we practiced. So what's that crisis playbook look like? It includes a few items. Super critical that you have this together prior to a crisis. Number 1 is crisis severity assessment tool. Number 2 is crisis team roles and contact information, decision-making frameworks, communication templates, stakeholder contact lists, pre-approved statement templates, legal and regulatory requirement checklist, and post-crisis review framework. Keep it accessible, update it regularly. I understand this may be a big company thing, but small companies need it as well. Maybe not all of them, but take a look at these. And if a crisis did hit, identify the ones that you absolutely need to have in your deck. So some quick principles here on this. Number one is financial buffers prevent panic decisions under pressure. Number two is operational redundancy eliminates points of failure. Number three is cultural readiness determines how fast you can adapt to the crises. Number four is crisis protocols. They enable disciplined response when chaos hits. And the next is stakeholder relationships provide credibility. Make sure you're managing those relationships before the crises. And the next is scenario planning builds muscle memory for crisis response. And build your crises team and playbook now. Do it now. Practice doesn't make perfect, but it makes you prepared. So I always give you a little bit of homework, let's say, at the end of each one of these episodes. And here's your homework and next steps for this episode, number 4. And the first is conduct vulnerability assessment, I call it. What would threaten your brand? Make a comprehensive list of it. Create crisis response framework. Document your version of the 5-step framework we talked about. Assess, protect, communicate, solve, and learn. The next is build vision versus a tactics metric. That's super important. What's fixed versus fluid in your brand? Document it clearly. And number 4 is develop crisis communication templates. Number 5 is resilience audit. Rate yourself on the 6 elements I talked about. Number 6 is identify a crisis team. Define the roles and responsibilities now. And again, this isn't fun work. I understand that. It's preparing for things you hope will never happen. But every hour spent preparing saves days, weeks, sometimes even years, or even the brand itself from crises. So in closing, I'd like to say some points to kind of summarize this Chronicle. Crisis doesn't build character, as I'd mentioned, it reveals it. And your response to crisis doesn't create your brand, it reveals what your brand actually stands for when pressure is highest. And every brand, regardless of your size, will face a crisis. This isn't a question of if, but when. The biggest question you'll have is how you respond to it. Will you freeze, panic? Will you compromise what you stand for? Will you communicate defensively or transparently? Will you emerge weaker or stronger? These choices are made now in preparation, not during crises when you're under maximum pressure. Build your resilience now. Create your framework now. Document your protocols now. Practice your responses now, because when crisis comes, and it will, you'll respond with the discipline you built beforehand. We've now covered in these sessions, these chronicles on becoming a visionary brand, the foundational elements of visionary branding, understand visionary principles, architecting disruption, and now creating consistency and navigating crises. In Chronicle number 5, which will be the final chronicle in this series, Becoming a Visionary Brand, we're going to talk about stories of brands that have crossed that bridge to visionary. The foundational stories that build everything. So until then, do this preparation work. Again, as I'd mentioned, I'm doing this both in video, which these will be in the video, and then I've also got these in the podcast notes as well. Do this preparation work. It's critical to your success. You don't want to be in a crisis and be in a situation where it not only damages your team, but it damages your brand equity, and it could be fatal to the future of your brand. Build your resilience. Create your framework for crises. Because the brands that dominate for decades really aren't the ones that avoid the crisis. They're the ones that can navigate it with discipline and really emerge stronger as a result. So if you're ready to move from theory to true market dominance, visit thevisionaryfiles.com to access an extended business leadership series. It's actually 18 courses, 2 hours of video work on the visionary brand. And it's at thevisionaryfiles.com. It has in-depth video lectures, support materials, Q&As, and how to architect a true legacy brand based on the strategies of my best-selling book, The Visionary Brand. And you can sign up there for the course, and it also has some free material as well through exclusive podcasts, as well as blogs that I put up there that are exclusive to thevisionaryfiles.com. And if this episode resonated with you, I'd encourage you to grab a copy of my new book, The Visionary Leader, The Success Principles of the World's Greatest Visionaries. It's a great complement to the visionary brand. So you've got a company strategy around becoming visionary, and then you've got a leadership strategy around becoming visionary. It's available now wherever books are sold. Perfect companion, I always say, to someone looking to really reignite your purpose or lead with more clarity in this super complex world that we live in today. And as a thank you for my little podcast listeners, we still have it for $1.99 on Amazon. And as of December, actually, I'll announce that we are now created and launched our audiobook version of both The Visionary Leader and The Visionary Brand. So the book is really a culmination of what I call decades of research, experiences that I've had, and real-world insights into what makes leaders like Steve Jobs, Leonardo da Vinci, Abraham Lincoln, Gandhi, what makes them truly visionary. And your support means the world. Your purchase goes a super long way in helping us spread the vision even further to leaders that are really needing this information in their hands to manage their day-to-day, both personally and professionally. So the Visionary Chronicles, where the future is created by those bold enough, to shape it. So until next time, keep innovating, keep leading, and keep shaping the future. Thank you for your continued support. And I look forward to hearing from you soon. As I always say, stay true, stay authentic, be different, and be great. But enjoy the journey along the way until the next Visionary Chronicles. Have a great day, and we'll talk soon.